After graduating from college, I was fortunate enough to be accepted into a public institution. After completing the new employee training, I was assigned to a small office in the countryside. Our agency's main task is to manage reservoirs, and on days when accidents are expected due to heavy rain, I was on duty at night. Today is my first day on duty. Originally, it was a rule to have a main duty officer and a deputy duty officers on duty, but the main duty officer, Middle Manager Kim, had not yet returned to the office after taking half an afternoon break. Until Middle Manager Kim returns to the office, I have to stand on duty alone. Night duty on a rainy day was an important task to prevent flooding, but in fact, the staff on duty had nothing to do. Situational action and reporting was the job of the site manager, and the office watchman remained perfunctory in the reporting system. However, as a new employee left alone in the office, I was anxious about what would happen. I sat in my seat by the window in the office and stared blankly out the window. A rural landscape with nothing but a few government offices. The wind blew hard and whipped the hairs of the maple trees around. Not too long ago, I was drinking beer with my classmates in the crowds of Gangnam. What am I doing in this countryside? At that time, the wind and rain pounded the office window violently, and there was a sound of a paper falling. A stack of papers, faded to yellow, had fallen under a cabinet on the other side of the office. On the cover, it was written "Night Watch Manual." I turned the pages carefully so as not to damage the papers. The principle of night duty is to work with 3 people. In unavoidable circumstances, 2-person work is permitted, and single-person work is strictly prohibited. 3-man work was a story a few decades ago, when administrative computerization was less and the number of workers was much higher than now. It seemed to be an old document. But why is it never possible to work alone? I turned to the next page. The Night Watch Patrol course was written. Patrol from the rooftop to the office on the 2nd floor, the office on the 1st floor, and the archives in the basement, but never open the door even if there is a knocking sound somewhere. Is it the sound of knocking on the door or the sound of rain? I decided to go to the rooftop, the first patrol course. My seat was in an office on the 2nd floor, and the door to the roof was just 1 flight of stairs up. The normally normal stairs were strangely steep and high in the dark. I climbed the stairs cautiously, relying on my phone's flashlight. It felt like if I sprained my foot, I would tumble down to the underground archives. I opened the roof door. The rain and wind were fierce. Put equipment that could be blown away by strong winds indoors. I was worried about whether I should go out, but I decided to handle it according to the manual like a new employee. There was nothing special on the outdoor rooftop where I went out with an umbrella. I was leaning against the railing where the canopy was installed, and I stepped on something and slipped slightly. If it hadn't been for the railing, I would have fallen down the building. I looked under my feet. What I stepped on was a rain-soaked wad of paper. I couldn't see the letters because it was smeared in the rain, but it looked like a manual of some kind. I picked up a wad of wet paper and went back indoors. I'm about to close the roof door and go down the stairs. There was a knock on the door. It was the sound coming from the iron door on the roof that I had just closed. Never open the door even if there is a knocking somewhere. I remembered the sentence written in the manual. It must be the sound of rain and wind hitting the iron door. So you can't open the door. After convincing myself like that, I went down the stairs. The knocking sound did not stop. The second floor and the first floor, we came to the basement archives. It was usually a dark and dreary place, so there was no way it would look cozy in the middle of a rainy night. I read the manual. Make sure the papers in the underground archive are not wet in the rain. If you see a red soaked document, leave immediately. I opened the door to the underground archive. Lights were dim and flickering. It seemed that the lights would go out any moment. I skimmed through the archives. I was browsing unfamiliar titles such as work manuals, facility management manuals, fatality measures manuals, and single-person on-call accident manuals, and all of a sudden, I saw a document stained in red. The title of the document was so red that it was hard to see, but the person in charge, Assistant Manager Lee, and my name were written on it. I ran to the entrance of the archives. I pulled the doorknob roughly, but the door wouldn't open. At that time, lights are off. I tried to take out my phone with trembling hands. Then, there was a knock on the door from outside the archives. Did Middle Manager Kim come, or was it just the sound of the wind? I knocked on the door like crazy without realizing it. Until I couldn't tell if it was knocking on the door outside or if it was me knocking on the door. How much time has passed? Stopped the sore fist. The knocking on the door had stopped. I carefully grabbed the doorknob and turned it. The door was left open and no one was outside. I returned to my office on the second floor and took my seat by the window. My whole body felt cold. I wrapped myself in a blanket and stayed still. 1 hour, 2 hours, will Middle Manager Kim not come? I opened the night watch manual again. Never open the door even if there is a knocking somewhere. Never open the door even if there is a knocking somewhere. Never open the door even if there is a knocking somewhere. Again knocking sound was heard. It sounded like a sound coming from the first floor. I covered my ears and curled up on my desk. My body trembled. The knocking sound seems to stop. The phone rang. I looked at the manual while trying to answer the phone. Never answer a call that rings at 1:01 in the morning. I looked at my cell phone watch. It was 1:01 in the morning. Not only the phone on duty, but all the phones in the office rang at once. Should I follow the manual of never answer a call that rings at 1:01 in the morning? Could it be an emergency reporting call? I was shaking and accidentally touched the handset. The call is connected. It was Middle Manager Kim's voice. After receiving the call from Middle Manager Kim, I went down to the first floor and found water overflowing up to my ankles. There was a knock, and middle manager Kim and the paramedics were knocking on the front door of the office. That day there was a record-breaking flood. The river near our office overflowed and nearly submerged the building. If middle manager Kim had been a little late, I wouldn't have been able to leave the office. Middle manager Kim was going to return to the office immediately after finishing the housework, but suddenly the child suddenly became ill, so he had to go to the emergency room. It was said that it was an unlucky day, as if someone was trying to prevent middle manager Kim from going to the office. The office I returned to after the flood was a mess. The night watch manual was not visible. It seemed that it was swept away by the water in the turmoil. I remembered the last sentence of the manual. If the office is soaked in rain, don't force yourself to leave. Sit by the window and wait. I looked for a seat by the window. Fragments of broken windows were scattered in a mess. After a while I saw a news article. The president of our public institution was saying something while expressing deep regret for the flood damage. We will create an innovative manual to prepare for emergencies. The boss was laughing while saying that.